She entered the wrong wedding hall by mistake, but ended up walking out with the groom's brother. The ornate double doors of the grand ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel swung open as Emma Chen rushed inside, clutching her invitation and checking her phone for the third time in 30 seconds, completely unaware that she was about to crash the wrong wedding and meet the love of her life in the process. Emma was already 20 minutes late for her college roommate Sarah's wedding, thanks to a combination of Los Angeles traffic, a wardrobe malfunction, and the kind of pre-social event anxiety that made her second-guess every decision from her outfit choice to her decision to attend at all. As a freelance graphic designer who worked mostly from her apartment, Emma had limited experience with formal events and an even more limited budget for appropriate attire. What Emma didn't know was that Sarah Kim's intimate ceremony was taking place in the smaller rose garden room downstairs, while upstairs in the grand ballroom, the Castellanos family was celebrating the union of their eldest son, Marco, to his college sweetheart, in a lavish celebration that had been planned for 2 years and cost more than Emma's annual income. As Emma stepped into the magnificent ballroom, crystal chandeliers, white roses cascading from 20-foot ceilings, and 300 guests dressed in designer formal wear, she immediately realized something was very wrong. This was not the casual garden party wedding Sarah had described. But before Emma could back out gracefully, she found herself face to face with someone whose presence would change everything: Alex Castellanos Marco's younger brother, who had been standing near the entrance greeting late arrivals, and who was about to discover that sometimes the most beautiful accidents happen when people end up exactly where they don't belong. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Real Father Story. Emma stood frozen in the doorway of the grand ballroom, her mind racing as she processed the obvious mismatch between Sarah's described small garden celebration and the opulent wedding reception unfolding before her. At 27, Emma had mastered the art of making herself invisible in uncomfortable social situations, a skill developed through years of being the scholarship kid at an expensive private high school, the work-study student at an elite college, and the freelance creative trying to network with clients whose lifestyles she could barely comprehend. But there was no hiding in this ballroom. Emma's knee-length black dress from Target, chosen because it was the most formal item in her closet, looked painfully out of place among guests wearing what appeared to be couture gowns and designer suits. Her simple black heels, comfortable enough for walking, but obviously inexpensive, felt like neon signs advertising her economic status to anyone who glanced her way. Emma's instinct was to retreat immediately, but as she turned toward the exit, she collided directly with someone carrying 2 champagne glasses and moving with the confident stride of someone completely at home in this elegant environment. "Whoa, careful there," said a warm male voice, as steady hands caught her shoulders, preventing what would have been a catastrophic stumble. "Are you okay?" Emma looked up into the kindest brown eyes she had ever seen belonging to a man about her age, with dark hair, an easy smile, and the kind of natural elegance that made expensive formal wear look effortless rather than costume-like. "I'm so sorry," Emma said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I think I'm in the wrong place, and I was just trying to leave before anyone noticed, but clearly that plan failed spectacularly." The man, tall, probably early 30s with laugh lines that suggested someone who smiled frequently, studied Emma's flustered expression with gentle attention rather than the judgment she expected. "Wrong place?" he asked, setting the champagne glasses on a nearby table. "Are you looking for a different event?" Emma pulled out her phone to show him Sarah's invitation, grateful to have concrete evidence that she wasn't crashing weddings for sport. "I'm supposed to be at Sarah Kim's wedding, but this is clearly not—" She gestured around the ballroom. This, Alex Castellanos, though Emma didn't know his name yet, looked at the invitation and immediately understood the situation. The Fairmont hosted multiple events simultaneously, and confused guests occasionally wandered into the wrong celebrations. Usually the mistake was corrected quickly and politely. But something about Emma's genuine embarrassment, combined with her obvious relief at finding someone willing to help, rather than judge her, made Alex reluctant to simply point her toward the correct room and send her on her way. "Sarah Kim's wedding is in the Rose Garden room," Alex said. "Downstairs past the main lobby through the corridor with the botanical prints." Emma felt simultaneously grateful for the directions and mortified by her mistake. "Thank you so much. I'm clearly not cut out for fancy hotel navigation." She started to leave, but Alex surprised himself by reaching out gently to touch her arm. "Wait," he said, then paused as if surprised by his own impulse to keep her there. "I'm Alex, by the way. Alex Castellanos. This is my brother's wedding." Emma felt her embarrassment deepen. She had crashed a family celebration, not just a random event. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm Emma Chen, and I promise I wasn't trying to crash your brother's wedding. I'm just navigationally challenged and apparently incapable of reading hotel signage." Alex laughed, a genuine sound that made Emma's anxiety ease slightly. "Trust me, you're not the first person to get lost in this hotel. Last year my cousin ended up in a corporate merger celebration instead of our family reunion. She spent 20 minutes networking with investment bankers before anyone realized she was supposed to be at the barbecue downstairs." Emma found herself smiling despite her mortification. "That actually makes me feel better about my life choices." "Good," Alex said, then hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Can I ask you something? And feel free to tell me it's none of my business." Emma nodded, curious about what Alex might want to know about someone who had accidentally crashed his family's celebration. "Do you actually want to go to Sarah Kim's wedding?" Alex asked. "Because you look like someone who's dreading it almost as much as you're dreading being lost in the wrong ballroom." The question was so perceptive and unexpectedly personal that Emma found herself answering honestly instead of giving the socially appropriate response. "You're very observant," Emma admitted. "Sarah and I were roommates in college, but we've grown apart over the past few years. Different life trajectories, different priorities. I'm happy for her, but honestly, I'm probably going to know almost no one there make awkward small talk for 2 hours and then drive home wondering why I didn't just send a nice gift and skip the event." Alex nodded with understanding that surprised Emma. "Social obligation events. I know them well." "Exactly," Emma said, then realized she was having the kind of honest conversation with a stranger that she rarely managed with people she'd known for years. "Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you this. You probably have actual guests to attend to instead of listening to a wedding crasher's social anxiety." Alex looked around the ballroom where the reception was in full swing, his extended family dancing, his parents greeting endless streams of relatives, his brother and new sister-in-law posing for what appeared to be their 100th round of photos. "You know what?" Alex said, making a decision that surprised him with its spontaneity. "I have a proposition for you." Emma looked wary, but curious. "What kind of proposition?" "Stay here for one drink," Alex suggested. "Let me introduce you to a few people as my friend Emma, who's visiting from out of town. Experience what it's like to be at a wedding where you're not obligated to network or make small talk with your college roommate's relatives you'll never see again." Emma stared at Alex, processing his unexpected invitation. "You want me to stay at your brother's wedding as your fake friend from out of town. I want you to stay as my real friend Emma, who I just met, and who seems like she could use an hour of conversation with someone who has no expectations about her social performance," Alex clarified. Emma felt something flutter in her chest. Not just attraction, though Alex was undeniably handsome, but something deeper. The recognition that someone had seen through her social anxiety to whatever person existed beneath it, and had decided that person was worth spending time with. "Why would you want to do that?" Emma asked. "You don't even know me." Alex smiled with a warmth that made Emma understand why people probably felt comfortable around him immediately. "Because you seem genuine in a way that most people at events like this aren't. Because you're clearly intelligent and thoughtful based on our 5-minute conversation. And because honestly I could use some genuine conversation myself." Alex gestured toward his family's celebration. "Don't get me wrong, I love my family, and I'm thrilled for my brother. But sometimes at big family events you end up talking to the same relatives about the same topics you discussed at the last family event, and it can feel more like performance than connection. Emma understood exactly what Alex meant. So you're suggesting we use each other as social buffers against obligation conversations. I'm suggesting we see if two people who just met by accident can have a better time together than they would have had at their respective planned social engagements, Alex said. Emma looked around the elegant ballroom at the obvious wealth and sophistication of the celebration, then down at her Target dress and discount store shoes. Alex, I appreciate the offer, but I'm clearly not dressed for this kind of event. Everyone's going to know I don't belong here. Alex followed Emma's gaze, taking in the designer gowns and expensive jewelry worn by most of the female guests, then looked back at Emma with an expression of complete sincerity. Emma, you look beautiful. Your dress is perfect, your presence is lovely, and anyone who would judge you based on your outfit isn't worth impressing anyway. The simple statement, delivered without flattery or manipulation, hit Emma like a revelation about how rarely anyone had made her feel like her appearance was acceptable, exactly as it was. Besides, Alex added with a grin, half the people here are my relatives, and they're going to be so curious about who you are that they'll be on their best behavior trying to impress you. Emma felt herself wavering between her instinct to flee from an uncomfortable situation and her growing curiosity about this man who had turned her embarrassing mistake into an unexpected invitation. "One drink?" Emma asked. "One drink," Alex confirmed. "And if you're miserable or uncomfortable, I will personally escort you to Sarah Kim's wedding with my sincerest apologies for keeping you." Emma took a deep breath, made a decision that went against every self-protective instinct she had developed over years of feeling out of place in expensive environments, and smiled. "Okay, Alex Castellanos, one drink, but if your family asks me about my job or my background, I'm going to tell them the truth. That I'm a freelance graphic designer who works from her apartment in pajamas most days, and whose idea of fine dining is trying a new flavor of ramen." Alex laughed with obvious delight. "Perfect. That'll be the most interesting conversation most of them have had all evening." As Alex led Emma toward the bar, she found herself walking into the kind of social situation she usually avoided at all costs. But something about Alex's presence, his easy confidence combined with genuine kindness, his ability to make her feel included without making her feel like a charity case, made her forget to be anxious about not fitting in. What Emma didn't know was that Alex Castellanos had spent most of his adult life feeling like he didn't quite fit into his family's expectations either, and that meeting someone who was authentic about their discomfort with social performance was exactly the kind of genuine connection he had been hoping to find. The wrong wedding was about to become exactly the right place for both of them. 20 minutes later, Emma found herself sitting at a small cocktail table with Alex completely absorbed in conversation and having forgotten entirely about Sarah Kim's wedding happening one floor below. Alex had kept his promise about making introductions simple and comfortable. When his Aunt Carmen approached their table, he had said simply, "Tia Carmen, this is my friend Emma. She's a graphic designer." When his cousin Miguel asked about her background, Alex deflected smoothly. "Emma creates visual campaigns for small businesses. She's got an amazing eye for design." Each introduction had been truthful, without being detailed, allowing Emma to engage in pleasant small talk without feeling interrogated about her life circumstances or career trajectory. More importantly, Alex's obvious comfort with her presence gave his family members permission to treat her as a welcomed guest rather than an outsider they needed to evaluate. "So," Emma said, sipping the glass of wine Alex had brought her, something expensive that tasted better than anything in her usual budget. "Tell me about being the brother of the groom. Is there a specific role you're supposed to play besides greeting lost wedding crashers?" Alex grinned. "Officially, I'm supposed to give a toast, later dance with elderly relatives, and make sure Uncle Roberto doesn't drink too much, and start telling embarrassing stories about Marco's childhood. And unofficially, I'm supposed to smile and deflect questions about when I'm getting married, why I'm still single, and whether I've met any nice girls lately. Alex said with mock resignation. Emma laughed. Ah, the classic single person at a wedding experience. I'm familiar with that interrogation. Exactly. Which is another reason having you here is perfect. You're my shield against well-meaning family members who think my love life requires their intervention. Emma felt a flutter of curiosity about Alex's romantic situation. He was clearly attractive, successful enough to afford designer formal wear, and had the kind of social ease that usually made dating relatively straightforward for men. Can I ask why you are still single? Emma said, then immediately felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sorry, that came out more personal than I intended. Feel free to tell me it's none of my business. Alex didn't seem offended by the question. Instead, he considered it thoughtfully while watching couples dance on the ballroom floor. Honest answer, Alex asked. Emma nodded. I think I've been waiting for someone who feels real, Alex said. Most of the women I meet through work or social events seem to be performing a version of themselves rather than actually being themselves. Perfect hair, perfect responses to every question, perfect alignment with whatever they think I want to hear. Alex paused, then continued with surprising vulnerability. Don't get me wrong. I understand why people present idealized versions of themselves, especially when dating. But after a while, all the perfection starts to feel empty. Emma understood exactly what Alex meant. Like you're dating someone's resume instead of their personality. Exactly, Alex said with obvious relief at being understood. What about you? Why is someone as interesting and beautiful as you spending Saturday night at a wedding where you barely know anyone? The compliment delivered matter-of-factly, rather than as obvious flirtation made Emma's heart skip slightly. Honest answer, Emma echoed Alex's phrasing. Honest answer? Emma took a sip of wine for courage before responding. I think I've been hiding from dating because I'm tired of feeling like I need to apologize for my life not being impressive enough. Alex looked intrigued rather than put off by Emma's admission. What do you mean? Emma had never articulated this feeling clearly before, but something about Alex's genuine attention made her want to try. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which means my income is unpredictable, and I don't have traditional career prestige. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake that I rent rather than own. I drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic and consider dinner at Olive Garden a splurge. Emma paused, then continued with growing confidence. Most of the men I've dated either fetishize my struggling artist lifestyle as romantic and bohemian, or they see me as a project they can improve through their influence and resources. Alex nodded with understanding that suggested he had witnessed similar dynamics from the other side. Neither response feels like they're actually interested in who I am, Emma concluded. They're interested in their fantasy about what I represent, or their vision of what I could become. Alex was quiet for several minutes, processing Emma's perspective, while watching her face in the soft ballroom lighting. Her honesty about her insecurities and frustrations impressed him more than any amount of polished small talk could have. Emma, Alex said finally, can I tell you what I see when I look at you? Emma felt nervous but curious about his response. Sure, I see someone who's brave enough to be authentic about her life, instead of pretending to be someone she isn't. Someone who works for herself, doing creative work she presumably loves, even though it means financial uncertainty. Someone who's thoughtful enough to recognize the difference between people who want to know her and people who want to change her. Alex leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but warm. I see someone who accidentally crashed a wedding, got embarrassed, but stayed anyway because she was curious about genuine conversation with a stranger. That combination of vulnerability and courage is incredibly attractive. Emma felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. Not because Alex was saying what she wanted to hear, but because he was describing her in terms that made her sound admirable rather than inadequate. Thank you, Emma said quietly. That's not usually how I think about myself. Maybe you should start thinking about yourself that way, Alex suggested gently. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of someone tapping a microphone, followed by Marco Castellanos' voice, requesting everyone's attention for toasts. Alex's expression shifted to mild anxiety. "That's my cue," Alex said. "I have to give the best man speech." Emma felt a flutter of disappointment that their conversation was being interrupted, but also curiosity about what Alex would say about his brother. "Go," Emma said, smiling encouragingly. "I'll be right here when you get back." Alex stood, then paused. "Emma, will you dance with me after the speeches? I promise I'm a better dancer than I am a public speaker." Emma's heart rate spiked at the invitation, but she found herself nodding. "I'd love to." As Alex walked toward the front of the ballroom, Emma watched him move through the crowd of his family and friends, with easy confidence, stopping to shake hands and exchange brief conversations with relatives who clearly adored him. Emma realized she was witnessing something important about Alex's character. The way he treated elderly family members with genuine respect, rather than patronizing courtesy. The way he listened carefully to what people said, instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. The way he made everyone feel like their conversation with him mattered. When Alex reached the microphone, the ballroom quieted with the expectant attention that suggested people were genuinely interested in what he had to say, rather than just politely enduring obligatory speeches. "Good evening, everyone," Alex began, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "For those who don't know me, I'm Alex Marco's younger brother, and the person responsible for most of his childhood injuries." The crowd laughed warmly, and Emma found herself smiling at Alex's easy humor. "Marco asked me to keep this speech short, which is probably wise since most of you know I have strong opinions about everything, and could talk for hours if given the opportunity." More laughter, and Emma noticed that Alex's family was watching him with obvious affection and pride. "But I want to share one thing about my brother that I think explains why we're all here celebrating his marriage to Isabella tonight." Alex continued, his tone becoming more serious without losing its warmth. "Marco has always been the person who sees the best in everyone around him. When we were kids, he was the one who befriended the new student, included the kid who got picked last in gym class, and stood up to bullies who targeted people who couldn't defend themselves." Emma felt her chest tighten as Alex described his brother's character, recognizing similar qualities in Alex's treatment of her that evening. As an adult, Marco has maintained that same generosity of spirit. He celebrates other people's successes without jealousy, supports friends through difficulties without judgment, and approaches every relationship with the assumption that people are worthy of love and respect until they prove otherwise. Alex paused, scanning the crowd, until his eyes found Isabella radiant in her wedding dress. "Isabella, you're not just marrying someone who will love you completely. You're marrying someone who will make you believe in the best version of yourself, even on days when you can't see it clearly." Emma felt tears in her eyes as she listened to Alex describe the kind of love that saw people's potential without trying to change them, that supported growth without demanding improvement. "Marco, you've found someone whose strength matches your kindness, whose intelligence matches your humor, and whose love for you is obvious to everyone who sees you together." Alex continued, now looking directly at his brother. "To Marco and Isabella." Alex concluded, raising his champagne glass. "May your marriage be filled with the kind of love that makes everyone around you believe in the possibility of finding their person." The ballroom erupted in applause and cheers, with guests raising their glasses in toast to the couple. Emma found herself clapping enthusiastically, moved both by the content of Alex's speech and by what it revealed about his understanding of love, character, and relationships. As Alex returned to their table, Emma realized that she had just heard someone articulate exactly what she had been hoping to find in a partner, someone who would see the best in her without trying to fix her, who would support her dreams without trying to redirect them, and who would love her completely while inspiring her to become the best version of herself. "That was beautiful," Emma said as Alex sat back down. "Your brother is lucky to have you as his advocate." Alex smiled with obvious relief that his speech had been well received. "Thank you. Public speaking isn't my favorite, but Marco deserved something meaningful." The band began playing again, and Alex extended his hand toward Emma with a smile that made her heart race. "Ready for that dance?" Alex asked. Emma took his hand, feeling like she was accepting an invitation to much more than just a few minutes on the dance floor. Ready, she said and meant it completely. As Alex led Emma onto the dance floor, she felt acutely aware that she was about to dance with someone she had met 3 hours ago, at a wedding she had crashed by accident, wearing a dress that cost less than most people's shoes at this event. But when Alex placed his hand gently on her waist and took her right hand in his left, all of Emma's anxiety about not belonging evaporated into the simple pleasure of moving in rhythm with someone who made her feel graceful rather than awkward. "You weren't kidding about being a good dancer," Emma said, as Alex led her smoothly through steps that made her feel like she knew what she was doing, despite having learned to dance from YouTube videos rather than formal lessons. "My mother insisted that all her children learn to dance properly," Alex explained, spinning Emma gently before drawing her back into position. She said that knowing how to make a woman feel elegant on a dance floor was a basic requirement of being a gentleman. Emma laughed. "Your mother sounds like she had strong opinions about proper social skills." "She still does," Alex said with obvious affection. "But she's also the person who taught me that treating people with kindness and respect isn't optional, regardless of their background or circumstances." As they continued dancing, Emma found herself relaxing into the music, and Alex's confident lead, forgetting to worry about whether she looked sophisticated enough for the elegant ballroom. "Alex," Emma said, as the song shifted to something slower and more intimate. "Can I ask you something that might be too personal for someone you met 4 hours ago?" Alex pulled Emma slightly closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the warmth of his chest through his dress shirt. "Ask me anything. Tonight feels like it exists outside normal social rules anyway." Emma smiled at Alex's acknowledgement that their entire interaction had been delightfully unconventional. "What do you do for work? I realized I've been talking about myself all evening without learning much about your actual life." Alex's expression shifted slightly, becoming more cautious in a way Emma recognized from her own responses when people asked about her career. "I'm an attorney," Alex said. "Corporate law, mostly mergers and acquisitions. Not particularly exciting, but it pays well and allows me to work on complex problems." Emma sensed there was more to Alex's career story, but also recognized the tone of someone who had learned to downplay their professional success to avoid certain types of reactions. "Do you enjoy it?" Emma asked. Alex considered the question while guiding Emma through a turn that brought them back into close position. "I'm good at it, and I find the intellectual challenges engaging. But honestly, I got into law because my father expected it, and I've stayed in corporate law because it seemed like the practical choice." Alex paused, then continued with the kind of honesty that had characterized their entire evening together. "What I actually love is pro bono work, helping small businesses understand contracts, assisting nonprofit organizations with legal compliance, working on cases where I feel like I'm solving real problems for real people, rather than just making rich corporations richer." Emma felt a surge of attraction that had nothing to do with Alex's physical appearance, and everything to do with his obvious passion for meaningful work. "Why don't you do more of that?" Emma asked. "Because pro bono work doesn't pay enough to support the lifestyle my family expects, or to pay off law school loans, or to maintain the kind of financial stability that makes dating and eventual marriage practical," Alex said, with resignation. Emma recognized from her own calculations about creative work versus financial security. Emma understood completely. The practical choice versus the passionate choice. "Exactly," Alex said with relief at being understood. "What about you? Is graphic design what you always wanted to do?" Emma felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that came with discussing her unconventional career path, but Alex's genuine interest made honesty feel safe rather than risky. "I actually wanted to be a fine artist," Emma admitted. "Painting specifically. I spent most of college working on canvases that explored themes of identity and belonging, dreaming about gallery shows and art residencies." "What happened?" Alex asked gently. "Reality happened," Emma said with a laugh that held only a trace of bitterness. "I realized that fine art is a luxury career that requires either independent wealth or a willingness to live in poverty while hoping for eventual recognition. Graphic design lets me use my creative skills while actually paying rent." Alex nodded with understanding. The practical choice versus the passionate choice, he echoed Emma's earlier words. Exactly, Emma agreed. Although I have to admit I still paint sometimes. Late at night when I finish client work and have energy left over for my own projects. Alex's eyes lit up with genuine interest. What do you paint now? Emma felt herself blushing slightly. Mostly cityscapes. Los Angeles at different times of day from different perspectives, trying to capture the way the light changes everything about how the city looks and feels. That sounds beautiful, Alex said, and Emma could tell he meant it rather than just being polite. I'd love to see your work sometime. The song ended, but neither Alex nor Emma moved to leave the dance floor. Instead, they remained in position as the band transitioned to another slow song, both of them reluctant to break the intimate bubble their conversation had created. Emma, Alex said, as they began moving to the new rhythm, I have a confession to make. Emma felt her heart rate spike slightly. What kind of confession? I haven't thought about Sarah Kim's wedding once since you agreed to stay for one drink, Alex admitted. In fact, I keep hoping this evening won't end because I don't want to stop talking to you. Emma felt warmth bloom in her chest at Alex's honesty about wanting to extend their time together. I have a confession too. What's that? I completely forgot I was supposed to be somewhere else until you just mentioned it, Emma said, smiling. This has been the best accidental evening I've ever had. Alex smiled back with obvious relief and growing affection. So what do we do about that? Emma considered the question while they continued dancing, acutely aware that their magical evening was approaching its natural conclusion, but reluctant to let reality intrude on what felt like a perfect suspension of normal time. Well, Emma said thoughtfully, Sarah's wedding is probably winding down by now, so I've officially missed my social obligation for the evening. And my family will be celebrating until at least midnight, so I'm officially free to leave without disappointing anyone, Alex added. They looked at each other with the kind of mutual understanding that happens when two people simultaneously realize they want the same thing, but are both too cautious to suggest it directly. Alex, Emma said, gathering her courage, would you like to get coffee somewhere, real coffee, not wedding reception coffee? Somewhere we can talk without elegant background music and your relatives potentially interrupting us. Alex's face broke into a grin that transformed his handsome features into something radiant. Emma, I would love nothing more than to get coffee with you and continue this conversation somewhere we can be completely ourselves, without any social performance requirements. Emma felt giddy with the realization that Alex was as reluctant as she was to end their evening together. I know a place, Alex said. It's nothing fancy. A 24-hour diner in Los Feliz that serves amazing pie and coffee that's actually good. Very different atmosphere from this. He gestured around the elegant ballroom. But perfect for real conversation. Emma laughed with pure joy. That sounds absolutely perfect. Lead the way. As they left the dance floor together, Alex stopped at his family's table to make brief goodbyes, introducing Emma simply as, my friend who I'm going to get coffee with, to relatives who smiled knowingly and told him to have a good evening. Emma watched Alex navigate these interactions with the same easy warmth he had shown her all evening, and realized she was seeing someone who was genuinely liked and respected by people who knew him well. Ready? Alex asked as they reached the ballroom exit. Emma took one last look around the elegant celebration she had accidentally crashed at the fairy tale wedding that had somehow led her to exactly where she needed to be. Ready? Emma said, taking Alex's offered arm and walking with him toward whatever came next. As they left the Fairmont Hotel together, both Emma and Alex understood that they had experienced something rare, the kind of instant connection that usually only happened in romantic comedies, combined with the genuine compatibility that suggested potential for something real and lasting. The wrong wedding had led Emma to exactly the right person. And as they drove through Los Angeles toward a late-night diner where they would talk until sunrise, both of them felt the excitement of recognizing that love really did find people when they least expected it, sometimes disguised as embarrassing accidents that turned out to be perfect opportunities. The universe, it seemed, had an excellent sense of humor about bringing hearts together even when they wandered into completely the wrong rooms while looking for completely different experiences. The Pantry Cafe on Fairfax Avenue at 11:47 p.m. was the opposite of the Fairmont Hotel's elegant ballroom in every possible way, and Emma loved it immediately. Red vinyl booths worn smooth by decades of late-night conversations, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly tired but authentic, and the comfortable shabbiness of a place where people came to eat good food and talk honestly rather than to see and be seen. Alex had changed out of his formal jacket and tie, rolling up his dress shirt sleeves, and looking more relaxed than Emma had seen him all evening. Emma had kicked off her heels under the table, grateful to be somewhere she could be completely comfortable, rather than constantly aware of her appearance. "This is perfect," Emma said, sliding into the booth across from Alex and accepting a menu from their waitress, a woman in her 50s, who called them Han, and recommended the apple pie without being asked. "I thought you might like it," Alex said, looking pleased with Emma's obvious comfort in the casual environment. "It's not sophisticated, but it's real, and the coffee is legitimately excellent." They ordered coffee and pie, then settled into the kind of unhurried conversation that only happened when two people had nowhere else to be and no agenda beyond getting to know each other. "Alex," Emma said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug and studying his face in the diner's honest lighting. "I have to ask, do you do this often? Rescue lost wedding crashers and invite them to late-night coffee?" Alex laughed, but Emma could see he was considering her question seriously. "Never. I've been to dozens of family weddings, and I've never even had a conversation longer than 10 minutes with someone I didn't already know." "So, what was different about tonight?" Emma asked. Alex was quiet for several minutes, clearly trying to articulate something he hadn't fully processed himself. "I think it was your honesty," he said finally. "When you realized you were in the wrong place, you were genuinely embarrassed rather than trying to play it off as intentional. When I asked about your life, you told me the truth about your struggles, instead of giving me a polished version designed to impress me." Alex paused, then continued with growing confidence in his analysis. "Most people I meet socially are performing some version of themselves that they think I want to see. But you were just yourself. Anxious about not fitting in, honest about your financial limitations, real about your feelings. It was refreshing in a way I didn't realize I'd been missing." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest at Alex's description of her authenticity as attractive rather than inadequate. "I'm usually more guarded than I was tonight. There's something about you that makes honesty feel safe." "What do you mean?" Alex asked. Emma considered how to explain the feeling she'd had from their first conversation. "You listen like you're genuinely interested in understanding people, rather than just waiting for your turn to talk. You ask follow-up questions that show you're paying attention. You don't seem to be judging whether my answers are right or wrong, just trying to learn who I actually am." Emma smiled. "Plus, you helped me when I was embarrassed, instead of making me feel worse about my mistake. That told me something important about your character." Their pie arrived, enormous slices of apple pie with flaky crust and cinnamon that smelled like comfort itself, and they continued talking while sharing bites and discovering more commonalities than either had expected. Both had complicated relationships with their families' expectations about success and marriage. Both struggled with balancing practical career choices against passionate interests. Both had been disappointed by dating experiences that felt more like job interviews than genuine connections. "Emma," Alex said around midnight after they had covered topics ranging from favorite books to travel dreams to childhood embarrassments. "Can I ask you something that might sound presumptuous?" Emma nodded, curious about what Alex was building up courage to say. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Not coffee after accidentally meeting at a wedding, but an actual planned date where we choose to spend time together because we want to get to know each other better." Emma felt her heart race with excitement and nervousness. "Are you asking me out on a real date?" "I'm asking you out on a real date," Alex confirmed. "Assuming you're interested in seeing me again when we're both less dressed up and more ourselves." Emma smiled with growing confidence. Alex, I would love to have dinner with you, but I have a condition. Alex looked curious but slightly wary. What kind of condition? I want to cook for you, Emma said. At my apartment. Nothing fancy, just a home-cooked meal where we can talk without waitresses interrupting us or other diners potentially overhearing our conversation. Alex's expression shifted to surprise and obvious pleasure. You want to cook for me? Emma nodded. I'm actually a pretty good cook, and I'd rather show you my real life, my actual apartment, my cooking skills, my choice of music and wine within my budget, than try to impress you at some restaurant where I'm worried about pronouncing menu items correctly. Alex reached across the table and took Emma's hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her knuckles. Emma, that sounds absolutely perfect. When can I see your real life? Emma felt giddy with the realization that Alex was as eager as she was to continue whatever was developing between them. How about Friday night? I can make my grandmother's recipe for Korean braised short ribs, which is definitely the most impressive thing in my cooking repertoire. Friday night sounds incredible, Alex said. What can I bring? Emma grinned. Just yourself. And maybe your appetite, because I tend to cook for 6 people even when I'm only feeding 2. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, holding hands across the diner table, and processing the fact that their accidental meeting was evolving into intentional courtship. Alex, Emma said softly, I have to tell you something. What's that? Emma met his eyes directly, wanting to be completely honest about her growing feelings. I've never felt this comfortable with someone I just met. Usually it takes me weeks or months to relax enough around someone to be myself. But with you it feels natural. Like we've been friends for years instead of hours. Alex squeezed Emma's hand gently. I know exactly what you mean. I keep expecting to run out of things to talk about with you, but instead, I keep discovering new topics I want to explore together. Alex paused, then continued with vulnerability that matched Emma's honesty. Emma, I don't want to scare you off by being too intense too quickly. But I have to say, this tonight has been the most genuine connection I've felt with anyone in years. Maybe ever. Emma felt tears prick her eyes at Alex's admission. Not because she was sad, but because she was overwhelmed by the recognition that someone she was attracted to was experiencing the same depth of connection she felt. You're not scaring me off, Emma said quietly. You're making me hope that this feeling is real and sustainable, not just magic that will disappear when we get back to our regular lives. Alex brought Emma's hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles softly. Then let's find out together. Friday night Korean short ribs and whatever happens when we choose to keep getting to know each other. Emma smiled through her emotional tears. Deal. They stayed at the diner until 2:30 a.m., reluctant to end an evening that had transformed both their understanding of instant attraction and their hope that genuine compatibility might be possible between 2 people willing to be completely honest with each other. When Alex finally walked Emma to her car in the diner's parking lot, both of them felt the awkwardness of ending a perfect evening, combined with the excitement of knowing they would see each other again in less than a week. Emma, Alex said, as they reached her Honda Civic, thank you for staying at my brother's wedding. Thank you for being brave enough to be yourself with a stranger. Thank you for reminding me what genuine conversation feels like. Emma felt her heart swell with affection for this man who had transformed her mortifying mistake into the best evening she'd had in years. Thank you for helping me when I was lost, Emma replied. Thank you for seeing something worth knowing instead of just someone who didn't belong. Thank you for making me feel like my authentic self is attractive rather than inadequate. Alex leaned down and kissed Emma's forehead gently, a gesture that felt both intimate and respectful, promising without presuming. Friday night, Alex said. Friday night, Emma agreed. As Emma drove home through the quiet Los Angeles streets, she reflected on the evening's impossible progression from embarrassing mistake to meaningful connection. She had entered the wrong wedding hall by accident and left with someone who might be exactly the right person even though she hadn't been looking for anyone at all. Alex drove home to his apartment in West Hollywood, already planning what he would bring to complement Emma's Korean short ribs, and wondering when he had last felt this excited about spending time with someone whose company he genuinely enjoyed, rather than someone he thought he should be dating. Both of them fell asleep that night with smiles on their faces, and the rare contentment that came from recognizing that love really did find people, when they least expected it, sometimes disguised as mortifying social accidents that led to exactly where hearts needed to be. The wrong wedding hall had led Emma to exactly the right person. And as both Emma and Alex drifted off to sleep, they understood that sometimes the best love stories began not with carefully planned meetings or strategic introductions, but with honest mistakes that revealed authentic connections between people brave enough to be genuinely themselves with someone who appreciated that authenticity completely. The universe, they were learning, had perfect timing when it came to matters of the heart, even when that timing looked like pure accident to everyone involved. 6 months after Emma accidentally crashed Marco Castellanos' wedding and met the love of her life, she and Alex sat in the same booth at the Pantry Cafe, celebrating their engagement with apple pie and coffee at midnight, the same way they had celebrated their first real conversation. Emma's engagement ring was simple and elegant, not because Alex couldn't afford something elaborate, but because Emma had specifically requested something understated that reflected her actual style rather than what she thought an engagement ring should look like. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had found the right wedding hall that night?" Alex asked, cutting into their shared slice of pie with the easy domestic familiarity they had developed over months of cooking together, traveling together, and learning each other's daily rhythms. Emma considered the question while admiring the ring on her finger, still new enough to surprise her when she caught sight of it, but already feeling like a natural part of her hand. "I think about it all the time," Emma admitted. "I would have spent 2 hours making awkward small talk with Sarah's college friends driven home alone and never known that the person I was supposed to meet was 3 floors above me greeting wedding guests and wishing he was having a genuine conversation with someone." Emma paused, then smiled. "Sarah's wedding was lovely, by the way. I finally made it to the reception when they renewed their vows last month." Alex laughed. "And how was it?" "Exactly as I predicted. Pleasant, but forgettable. I knew almost no one made polite conversation about jobs and housing markets, and left early to come home to you." Emma reached across the table to take Alex's hand, a gesture that had become automatic over their months together. "Whereas crashing your brother's wedding led to the most important relationship of my life." Alex brought Emma's hand to his lips and kissed her engagement ring gently. "Marco takes full credit for our relationship, by the way. He says if he hadn't gotten married in the grand ballroom, we never would have met." "He's not wrong," Emma agreed. "Although I prefer to think the universe was conspiring to bring us together, and Marco's wedding was just the most efficient delivery method." They sat in comfortable silence, both reflecting on how completely their lives had changed since that accidental meeting. Emma's graphic design business had flourished, partly because Alex's legal expertise had helped her negotiate better contracts and understand client agreements, but mostly because her increased confidence and happiness had translated into more creative and successful work. Alex had gradually transitioned to a practice focused primarily on pro bono and small business legal work, taking a significant pay cut, but finding professional satisfaction he had never experienced in corporate law. Emma's financial independence and their combined resources had made the career change financially viable. Most importantly, they had created a relationship built on the same authenticity that had characterized their first conversation. Honest about challenges, supportive of each other's dreams, and grounded in genuine enjoyment of each other's company rather than strategic partnership or social convenience. "Emma." Alex set his tone, shifting to something more serious. "I want to ask you something about the wedding." Emma looked curious. "What kind of question?" "We've been planning our own wedding for 3 months now, and I keep thinking about what kind of celebration actually reflects who we are as a couple." Alex paused, organizing his thoughts. "All the traditional wedding venues we've looked at are beautiful, but they feel like performances of what a wedding should look like, rather than celebrations of what our relationship actually is. Emma nodded, understanding exactly what Alex meant. They had toured several elegant venues that reminded her of the Fairmont Hotel's grand ballroom, impressive but somehow impersonal, designed to look perfect in photographs, rather than to facilitate genuine connection among guests. "What are you thinking?" Emma asked. Alex smiled with the same spontaneity that had led him to invite her to stay at his brother's wedding 6 months earlier. "What if we got married here?" Emma blinked in surprise. "Here at the Pantry Cafe. Think about it," Alex said, his enthusiasm building. "This is where we had our first real conversation. This booth is where we decided to keep seeing each other. This place represents everything authentic about our relationship: real conversation, genuine connection, and the choice to prioritize substance over style." Emma looked around the diner that had become their regular meeting place for important conversations, celebrations, and quiet evenings, when they wanted to be together without any social performance requirements. "Are you seriously proposing that we have our wedding reception at a 24-hour diner in Los Feliz?" Emma asked. "I'm proposing that we have our wedding celebration at the place that represents the beginning of our real relationship, surrounded by people who love us for who we actually are, rather than who we think we should be," Alex clarified. Emma felt excitement and nervousness bubble up in equal measure. "Alex, that's either the most romantic idea I've ever heard, or completely insane. Can it be both?" Alex asked hopefully. Emma looked around the diner again, imagining their families and friends gathered in the red vinyl booths, celebrating with pie and coffee, instead of champagne and canapes focused on joy and connection, rather than elegant presentation. "You know what?" Emma said, feeling the same courage that had led her to stay at the wrong wedding 6 months earlier. "I think it's perfect. Completely unconventional, probably shocking to both our families, and absolutely perfect for us." Alex's face broke into a grin of pure joy. "Really? Really?" Emma confirmed. "But only if we can convince the management to let us serve Korean short ribs alongside the regular menu." Alex laughed with delight. "Deal! Although I think we should also have apple pie as our wedding cake." Emma leaned across the table and kissed Alex softly, tasting coffee and cinnamon, and the sweetness of building a life with someone who understood that the best celebrations honored authentic relationships rather than social expectations. "I love you, Alex Castellanos," Emma said against his lips. "I love you too, Emma Chen," Alex replied. "Thank you for getting lost and finding me." As they sat in their booth, planning an unconventional wedding that would perfectly reflect their unconventional beginning, both Emma and Alex understood that they had discovered something rare: a love built on genuine compatibility, sustained by mutual respect, and strengthened by the shared commitment to being completely themselves with each other. The wrong wedding hall had led Emma to exactly the right person at exactly the right moment, in exactly the way that proved love really did find people when they least expected it. And as they walked out of the Pantry Cafe hand in hand, already planning how to transform their favorite diner into the most meaningful wedding venue possible, both of them felt grateful for every accident, coincidence, and moment of courage that had brought them together. Love, they had learned, was less about finding someone perfect and more about finding someone whose imperfections complemented your own, whose authenticity inspired your honesty, and whose presence in your life made every day feel like a gift rather than an obligation. The universe had excellent timing when it came to hearts that were ready to be found by each other, even when they wandered into completely the wrong rooms while looking for completely different experiences. Sometimes the best destinations were the ones you never planned to visit at all.